Okay, so we're almost ready to start. So for this panel session, we will have mostly the discussion between the speakers on the topics. If you have questions, please prepare them. We will have some time closer to the end to discuss particular questions after the opening part. And of course, you can find everyone at the venue.
I'm okay.
Just to be in the same order.
Hello.
Okay, that's a nice idea. Thank you.
Hello. So yeah. Oh.
You don't have one.
Okay.
Hello.
So everyone has mics. We can start. To enable mic, there is a button here, just in case.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you. So thank you everyone to join us for this first panel of the day. So the goal of this panel is really to have multiple of speakers you have today in some other talks, maybe some you already have seen. And the goal is really to have a debate, I will say, something to know more about a subject. So right there is about AI. I call it Kubernetes for AI or AI for Kubernetes. The goal is really to see what is the impact of AI on the Kubernetes ecosystems and everyone around. And first of all, so yeah, on AI we will maybe talk about every part of AI. So there is trainings, inference, and agentics model. And so yeah, we have four different speakers, really cool, and I will let everyone to present themselves and also to have their experience on AI. Maybe we'll come and begin by Engin.
So hey everyone, my name is Engin Diri and I'm working for Pulumi. If you know Pulumi, we have an infrastructure as code company. So naturally now with not only the early adopters, but now enterprises and so on, diving into the AI area, there will be a lot of touch points with them. So using AI for Kubernetes and also provisioning infrastructure for AI. And that's where I have my touch points now. And yeah, thanks for inviting for the panel.
Thank you. Lena?
Hi everyone, my name is Lena. This time I brought a glass of water, so it should be better. I have some experience with running LLMs, as you saw before, but also running other AI workloads on Kubernetes and also infrastructure, mostly machine learning stuff to evaluate data. Yep.
Hello, my name is Jonas Felix, and I mostly try to get the LLMs to do what I want and to teach others how that could be done, which doesn't always work with the LLMs and the teaching, but let's see.
Hello, my name is Clément Raussin. I'm working here in Geneva in Chiminfo, and my job is more about Kubernetes with some specialists on Kubernetes, and today I will speak more about agentic on Kubernetes, not LLM deployments, but more agentic patterns and stuff like that.
Thank you. So as you have seen, maybe we don't have that much people that know about training parts, so maybe that will not be really our main focus. Sorry if some people just like want to hear more about it. The first question I have for the panel is really what is the main impact of running some AI workloads on Kubernetes, and what are the main new features that you will see on Kubernetes that can help on running some AI workloads.
So for me, what really clicked is when I was at KubeCon and I saw a talk by a person from Google showing us a bit the roadmap of where Kubernetes is going. And as we all know, Kubernetes is not really that much of a platform, right? It can be used to create a platform, but it's more of an abstraction over infrastructure. And GPUs are just another piece of infrastructure. And I really loved how they see the trajectory of Kubernetes in going to be more of an abstraction generically over infrastructure. So like we have storage plugins for now where we can abstract generically any kind of storage. They want to extend that in order to be able to extract to abstract more kinds of infrastructure. And one good use case for that is obviously GPUs, as we saw before, where it's getting more and more generic that you can really abstract those GPUs over the Kubernetes API and over the tools that are integrated in Kubernetes. And it's really cool to see that the strategic trajectory of Kubernetes is going in that direction to become more and more of this infrastructure abstraction. But also there are actual use cases for it, like we saw with LLMs, like also what Diana presented also at KubeCon, how CERN is using GPUs. All of that are actual use cases for this abstraction. And I think they've added more and more of that in the latest Kubernetes version, which makes it more and more optimal to run AI and ML workloads on top of Kubernetes.
Do you have maybe some example? I know that Diri was a main subject at latest KubeCon NA. So dynamic resource allocation, do you know about? And also, did you have some problems? I know that when we are talking about GPUs, we mainly talk about NVIDIA, so the NVIDIA operators. So is there someone with experience with NVIDIA operator on the array? Anyone in the panel want to talk? So
the only thing I know about running GPUs with Kubernetes is that they still always don't have enough memory. So most of the times you don't get the GPUs you want. I mean, you can sometimes, but often the customers don't have the GPUs that you want them to have.
I can maybe add something to this. So obviously, when customers reach out for us, it's always the question, why? So they say, hey, I want to run LLMs locally. Then we have always to ask, why you're not going for some kind of a frontier model to say, take one of the model as a service provider like OpenAI or Anthropic and so on. Okay, we need to find out what is the reason, because now we come into the situation because it's still not that easy. It can be quite expensive when you do some errors. So I had a presentation on this call, I worked with a customer. The first approach was really simple deployments, Kubernetes deployments with a GPU allocation on a resource and just let it run like this. And then they quickly find out that's not sustainable. They used Carpenter under the hood to roll out AWS nodes, GPU nodes, but that was not sustainable because you ended up with a lot of nodes provisioned for underutilized use cases because people booked the stuff and then maybe lost interest on this and stopped the stuff, never deprovisioned the system, so it was a big mess. So here comes the question, so are you sure you want to go this way? Because it's not easy and we need to make sure that your mechanism go away, you have observability, you have tracking, cost control, to not end up with a pile of clusters, nodes running in the cloud and completely underutilized. So that was an eye-opener. So what we did when we joined then the project is helping them to establish, for example, K-served, which is one of the ways where you get some interesting approaches. And most importantly was also let people use the models through an AI gateway. So just deploy one model and say, okay, we have GPT, whatever system they needed to run. Don't give everybody their own model, give just one and give people access. And through this access, we have a good observability and tracking, cost control, and chargeback possibilities for the people using it. So that was also some points we added when we went the route of running local LLMs, the system.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Engin. When we built also our project with Benjamin, we first tried to install the LLM and build it in the Kubernetes cluster, but we chose at the end to put LLM outside of the cluster and then build all the agentic workload on the cluster and the gateways, agent gateway, but also MCP gateways, things like that. And it was a good approach, I think, for the best result for our work case. Most of the case, we don't need GPU inside. It's expensive and also complex to administrate. So just as a good question at the beginning of the project.
There's also K-Agent, which is a pretty cool tool for this use case. I think it was recently adopted by the And you can use it to orchestrate your different agents and and not have this underutilization of resources?
Yes, our demonstration this afternoon, just I will not spoil it, but it's based on key agents, and we can build a key MCP to model context protocol to manage your external tools from agents, and you can build also key agents, and you can have the orchestration of agents in the clusters. Agents are a new CRDs, so it's very interesting to use key agents. The first step is very, very nice with key agents, and yeah.
And why did we create key agents at first? Why is not a deployment as any other? So why in this model AI needs some new primitives in Kubernetes?
I will try to answer a little bit. The complexity with agents on Kubernetes is unpredictability, context management, because it's not like microservices, it's much more stateful, and also semantic communications. So we have to create a new object in Kubernetes to manage to isolate the context, and also to manage unpredictability better with this kind of objects.
I think it also shows quite what I talked about at the beginning, that Kubernetes wants to become more and more this generic abstraction layer over infrastructure and provide very generic primitives, and then these can be implemented by the individual providers, by community projects and so on, which then create their own CRDs that are based on these very generic basic types.
Inside this model, so we are talking about MCPs, etc. What is the impact also on communications? So talk a little bit more about also authorization. What is the impact of all these requests in terms of communications?
First of all, you can have new communication, like agent-to-agent communications. So it's new protocol, not standards yet, but new protocols. You also have to change the way to observe communications, because it's a natural language communication between agents. So it's not the same like predictive, when you have a fixed path and you can observe it. The agents can communicate differently to do the same thing, so you have to observe it differently also. It's my point of view.
I can add something to the agent. I mean, I also tried K-agents and so on. We have a product written completely in a framework, so I'm not 100% convinced with K-agent, this abstract way system prompt. You can bring your own agent. Maybe that's something people will do a lot, using AutoGen or using Struts SDK to create the agents. What I found currently the most interesting part when this comes to creating agent will be now what Stripe introduced also with the micropayments. So that looks something very interesting, because then things are working together, agent to agent, having now the way that I expose my agent, attach some kind of price to it, and let the agent use this, discover, see, hey, there's a special agent for this specific case, I don't need to write anyone, and then also pay for it. So for this reason, they reactivated the HTTP code payment needed that was invented, probably at the beginning. They didn't know what to do with this, but now they take this HTTP code 402 or something like this, and now have a way that agents can now communicate and pay with a stable coin. I don't want to go into the crypto things, I'm not talking about too much, but yeah, they have this way with the US stable coin to say, okay, now when an agent uses another agent, discover the services it exposed, it can also now pay for this and use the service. So we see probably now the next year also an increase around this, like we did with APIs. APIs now cost also money. There are rarely any free APIs left. So we see in the future maybe also some kind of AI economy where people expose agents, and for agent-to-agent, multi-agent scenarios, where then also monetize this one. that could be something just for adding. I found this very interesting.
Especially the pay-as-you-go model, right?
Yeah.
That you see from, like, before these APIs, we weren't really so much used to just paying per token or per million tokens, and now we can even do that on a much more fine-grained level.
Yeah.
So I didn't speak a lot because I was like, what I find interesting in the Kubernetes world, and obviously it makes a lot of sense for some companies, and don't get me wrong, we tend to over-engineer stuff. We tend to build our own complete universes and additional abstraction layers with policy engines on top of whatever API gateways and everything. And when I go to the customer and I see, not all of the engineers, of course, there are some engineers that are really into that and they do a lot of things. But like if you look at the broad spectrum of engineers and also product owner or whatever you want to name the other layers, just building the trust and seeing the possibilities and seeing the pathways and also understanding who they can go to and who they have to bring to the table and win for this topic to make things work in the company. Because obviously with AI, especially if you want to run it locally, you're starting at the hardware level with GPUs. And you're going to software, you're going to data, you're going everywhere. And at the end, somebody has to also think about what do we really want to use it for. And the user also has to understand what works and what doesn't work. So that's really tricky. So I think most customers are still like there, and they're far away, like with many other topics, from this kind of like end game orchestration topics. Yeah.
I think it's also much a people problem, right? Or a people issue. And usually I see this triangle of three sort of stereotypical types of people. There is the manager or the person who is more involved with business stuff, who has gotten the goals of doing something with AI or LLMs, but they are not really sure yet what. They just need to do something with it, or they don't want to miss this train. And then there is the engineers who are a bit younger, maybe, who are very hyped about AI and LLMs, who are using Cloud Code every day, stuff like that. And then there are the other engineers, maybe a bit more senior, a bit older, that are a bit more skeptical, that think it creates more kind of problems and bugs and security issues if you use too much of those tools. And there's a lot of tension between those three groups of people because they have very different backgrounds and they have very different needs and requirements towards AI and LLMs. And I think this we also shouldn't neglect. But yeah, I mean, we're all engineers, so we all want to jump onto the technical problems. But it's also a people problem at some point to find the actual use cases, as you said, where AI actually makes sense, and we're not just using it because we don't want to miss the hype.
And there is an interesting point now. Everything started with vibe coding. I don't know if you guys remember the whole stuff. People created games. I still watch probably every day some YouTube channels where a person used different LLMs to create Plants vs. Zombie or whatever. And it's really interesting to see the same prompt for the games. But I saw recently now the change from vibe coding to vibe engineering. So the expectation is we all now things hallucinate and so on, but the expectation is still there that we need to handle this. So now we come into the case that we have now access to a lot of agents we're going to create. We let them do the work. So my colleague, for example, he's raving currently about Speckit from GitHub. He created some really different problem we had at Pulumi, and he let the agent run with Speckit and keep on correcting itself, because now you have really the specification. You're not just saying a simple prompt like do this, give the AI enough space to hallucinate stuff and completely derive in a way you didn't want it. So having the strong specification written, he's now he changed the position from coding, doing, to orchestrating, humanly orchestrating, still have the human in the loop to check the stuff, but give tight guardrails for the AI agents, for different agents to do the work. And the result he presented, what would take before 1 week, he said it was like 5-6 hours, he let it run. It was impressive. I mean, he really solved an issue. So I coming to the stage to realize that the ecosystem around the whole AI stuff is so much evolving that we now can reduce the hallucination level and really get some output out of it when we cleverly set the boundaries, set the context and all the stuff. So that was really, really interesting. So highly recommend everybody have a look at the spec it from GitHub and play around and change the way you work from prompting, trying to one-shot, to creating a specification. I think AWS created also Kiro, the IDE, completely with specification in mind. So they have the prompting way, but still have the spec way, where they say, okay, now you can tell your agent not to go through the prompt, but through the spec you created, MD files. That makes much a difference. So.
Yeah. I will go on this way also. So we see that so we are working mostly inside the open source ecosystem, and we see sometimes some fear on contribution based on only prompting AI. So what is your just like personal opinion about it, about any new contribution that can be done on any project maybe you maintain based on someone that used LLM?
Was 2 years ago, I was in Japan, and it was the first time I saw Linus Torvalds in person, which was very special for me, because you have to imagine, when I was 19, I had the poster of Linus Torvalds on my wall. But no, a different story. But he was asked this question, and he says he doesn't care. As long as the code is, maybe I'm paraphrasing, this exact phrase is a bit different, but he said like, I'm really sure there is already code in the kernel, and he said, I really don't care. It's somehow, I don't really know what he said, something like it's like a complex way of code generation or a complex way of completion. So I don't know if some human is owning the code and it works. It's not copied from Stack Overflow and search replaced the name, so. But that's my personal opinion. So
it's not worse than copy paste from Stack Overflow. So
Yeah.
and I think it could be good to accelerate project and gain on quality also, because you can also integrate the review by AI also. It's a new approach, maybe can be good.
And that's, oh, sorry. Michio Hashimoto, the guy who invented Terraform, he works on Ghosty, the terminal application, and he was very open with this contribution with AI stuff. He's like, okay, you have to disclose this, and he, on his own, said without Cloud Code, he would not have been this progress he made. So it's very open on this part. I've talked a couple of weeks ago at a place they create agentic code reviews. So it's called Kodo, the company, and they are also like this. We are using now so much AI to generate more features, be it big or small and so on. Humans cannot watch all of them. So we come into the place where we also have now agents doing the code review, because the code we are spitting out are much, much quicker. So maybe the human in the loop will be reserved for some specific cases, for some critical part, but maybe, as you said, also, maybe we don't care anymore so much about the way it was created, but more about the outcome, the stuff it created, finish the user story, but let coding agents approve the code based on our guidelines, which still apply. We could still say, don't make files over 700. I did last time a Rust project, and my main RS was 1,400 lines. Yeah, because Cloud Code is like YOLO. And I had to specifically tell then the system, like, bro, can you reduce this stuff, and then give him some guidelines around good Rust. There are some skills, Cloud Code skills, and he really cut the thing down again, because it helps to reduce the context usage, because when there's a new change, it doesn't need to read the 1,000 lines of main RS and already pollute half of the context. So, yeah.
I think the important part is what you said, Jonas, is that really there is still human ownership. Other than that, it's just a tool, like a linter. Like if AI reviews my code or linter does, I don't really care. But in the end, I, as a person, am signing my commits with GPT or whatever, and I am still responsible for what is in that commit. I'm also liable for what is in that commit, because no AI and no AI provider is going to take any liability or any responsibility for the code that they produce. And this we have to be aware of, and we have to factor in. Other than that, I think it doesn't really matter which tools I use. As you said, Linus said also, he doesn't care. Just the result needs to be good, and somebody needs to take ownership of what happened. Maybe to bring it back to Kubernetes a bit, have any of you used AIs also to interact with Kubernetes clusters, like with, I don't know, Kate's GPT or something like that?
Yeah.
Yes, and I try different tools, including MCPs, and at the end it's like, I have a very good shell integration in my agentic tool set, so I'm mostly just telling it to use kubectl and YAML files, and it's so good and it's so fast. So after a while, I just deleted all the MCP servers doing that stuff, and I just have like I call it a cheap command line model context protocol, basically, and I just do a markdown file and put in like example commands. Sometimes I just copy paste the help from some commands. Oh, and very important, tell it to read the custom resource definitions first. You can do kubectl, get CRD, whatever CRD, and then out YAML, and tell it to use explain, and tell it to use API resources, because most of the errors it does is because it doesn't know your cluster, it doesn't know your CRDs, and so if you tell it to check that first, it will be amazingly good.
For me, I think it's the AI for Kubernetes is good, maybe to enhance the developer experience also on the DevOps way. Not everybody can manipulate Kubernetes well, and it's a way to explore, to have some overview on how my workloads and my software works on Kubernetes. It's maybe not the final approach for an administrator, but can be cool to keep Kubernetes, or to create a more accessible, a more easy way to interact with Kubernetes for beginners also, maybe.
Yeah, and AWS at reInvent released a new agent called AWS DevOps agent, and I see this really cool because now when we have a war room situation, we sit down, there was an issue, we just use the feedback of the AI agent as an additional channel to investigate. What we did before, caveman style by hand and whatever, I can now really say my DevOps agent, do this. It can reason over a lot of different data sources, Prometheus, whatever, get the information and present me something and say, hey, listen, I don't know what you folks come up with, but this is my suggestion, what could be the issue, because it's much, much quicker and gives me quicker feedback. So that's what I love. So for me, similar to your, Jonas, your setup, I also use only kubectl under the hood. And if you use Terraform Pulumi, you can get the kubeconfig from your cluster. So the system uses the CLI from your IAC, get the kubeconfig, set it, and use the kubectl stuff to, sometimes it even does a port forwarding to go to a specific service to get informations out. And this is much, much faster. I see what it's doing. I could do this also manually, but why? That's now the system does it and presents me some of the information. What I only hate is when it starts to alter the cluster. I tell him 10 times, don't touch anything. I have GitOps and whatever, and it starts like, oh, let me patch this config map. And I'm like, oh, that's the only downside.
I have a question, when we're talking about using AI. So Cloudflare is down, as you may know. And luckily, OpenRouter and the Tropic did work because I had to rewrite my talk. I'm not done yet because I use OpenAI for some parts. So my question is I would like to run models locally, or at least, let's say, in a Switzerland-based organization. My issue is just if they're just a few percentage worse than, let's say, Sonnet 4.5, 1 million context, which is kind of like unbeatable. at the moment. If it's just a few percentage lower, it just worsens the outcome so much. Because imagine if you work with it for, let's say, 1 hour, and it does, let's say, it does maybe whatever 1,000 changes in this 1 hour. If you have 2% worse outcomes, or 3 or 4 or 5%, because it's the gap is usually even worse if you compare models you can run yourself to models to the frontier models. That's a lot of more errors to handle. More mistakes, misunderstandings. It's usually not the simple stuff like a semicolon. It's like hard misunderstandings. So what model and how can we run that ourselves or get that running? Yeah.
In my view, this is not a new problem, though, right? We've always had this case where we need to make a distinction between the data that we can actually send to some external providers that are in other countries or whatever, and the stuff that we need to treat locally. And there, it's always a numbers game. And I think with these LLMs, for example, the numbers game is just much crazier, because it even goes beyond Moore's law, what is needed in order to do inference with these models. And I don't even want to talk about the training. So I think the important part there is that we make this distinction between what data can we actually, and what code can we actually send anywhere in the world, and it doesn't matter so much, and which ones do we need to treat locally, and then find sort of a middle ground, best solution there with the resources that we have available.
Yeah, because right now, so we see that AI is pretty much everywhere, so we have to deal with it, and everyone is working with AI. So we was talking in the beginning that it was hard to, at some point, to run AI models. So do you see maybe, or do you fear maybe at some point that there will be some kind of sovereignty problem where no one will be able to run AI and only use something external? Is it a fear that you will see, or maybe is Kubernetes can be just like the gap and miss the gap and be able every time to be able to run AI models? Is it something that Kubernetes can be there for the sovereignty of any enterprise?
If I add something, but again, it depends on your view on the world and so on. I think if you use a frontier model, you always have to rely on the bias of the people. So you don't know when they present you something. It's maybe less for technical stuff. It could be also my daughter or my wife. My daughter is using it for learning and so on. It could be, do I get the information I should get, or do I get some kind of filtered or some kind of influence stuff? And it could be, we as European, that we say, maybe we want to get an unbiased view, or maybe we want to weight the stuff differently that we probably get. We see the political changes in the States, for example, and that could be an impact to say it's time. And I'm from Germany. We have Stackit, the people from Kaufland Schwarz. They're starting now to create their own AI data center and also delivering here the stuff in the future. And I think that could be something which makes much sense, to have models powerful as the one from the frontier one, but maybe with the European touch on some of the things. And that could be one of the only reasons I could see why that makes sense.
Yeah, it's important for data centers, but also for the models. There is some initiative in Switzerland, for example, Apertus. So it's something to be more clear on how the model is built. Also, it's important for sovereignty, and yes, maybe important for the future.
My personal hope and fear and nightmares, but also positive dreams, I don't know, it's hard to guess, is that in 2 or 3 years there will be a lot of H200s to buy for cheap, because suddenly some companies who bought thousands of them don't need them anymore. But don't call me out on that. But probably because GPUs improve, models get better, hopefully it comes to a point that it will be kind of like from the mainframe age to the personal computer age, that you basically, now it's kind of like unimaginable to have like a 1 tera or 700 gigabyte VRAM model running locally, but maybe in 2 or 3 years, to maybe some research, getting a bit more efficient, but also to just having it more common. Maybe obviously not in your home PC you will have one, I mean maybe not, maybe in 2 or 3 years you will have 1 tera VRAM somehow in your local machine. So my personal hope is that everything converge, so it gets basically, to use a funny word, like a commodity. It's like the models you can run and train yourself on the hardware you can get for cheap on your own, in your own data center or at home, is as good as the frontier models are today or maybe next year. So the difference between our ability to run that stuff to the big frontier model companies will just shrink away. That's my personal hope, which also will obviously have some financial impact on the stock market, but I don't know about that. Luckily, I don't know much about that.
And maybe a final question. We see that every time there was some kind of revolutions, there was some new role happening, DevOps, SREs, etc. There is also data availability engineers. Do you think like we will see some kind of AI reliability engineers or some kind of new role, or do you see AI just like in every role of a company?
Let's invent a new agentic ops, I don't know.
Maybe we should start to replace agile organizational structuring with AI oriented. Like I did Scrum Master, like whatever, 15 years ago, and now I never wanted to learn SAFe, but all the customers are talking about SAFe, and they have the restructuring all the time. Maybe we could use AI to restructure all the teams again and just say, okay, let's AI choose our titles, and instead of SAFe we have an agile, we have an AI focused organization where basically the management asks ChatGPT who should be what, who should be doing what. I'm just joking, but maybe you never know.
Yeah, I think call it whatever you want, but we won't get around looking into these technologies and getting familiar with them and including them in our daily lives. Maybe we will get new job titles for that, but it will happen, I'm pretty sure.
I agree what Lena said. AI is here to stay, and we should start to embrace it and use it and find out, because the expectations from management will be quicker. You have to be quick and see how your AI setup will look like. And yeah, that's the reality nowadays, and there's no coming back. It will be not like 10 years ago that we have this nice bubble we live in. Now it's changed. So that's the bottom line from my experience, at least.
Yeah. Thank you everyone.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. So we have a lunch starting, but if you want, we can spend a few more minutes asking questions if you're not hungry.
Yeah. Some questions.
Does anyone have questions to the speakers? Well, anyone?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Everyone's
Thank
hungry.
you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
I
very
guess
much.
everyone keeps to their job.